Hello everyone, this is Jimmy, and today I wanted to do a quick sort of tutorial and walkthrough of how I prepare for an Atlassian certification. I see a lot of questions and comments on the community asking about, how I pass those exams when they're so hard. We need more sample questions, things of those nature, and I currently hold 5 or 6 certifications myself that I thought I'd sort of take my perspective on how I prepare for it, and hopefully just some of the ideas that I offer up will help you better prepare for yourself. So let's get started. Let's switch over here. I'm just going to change what we're looking at. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to university.atlassian.com, which is a great, easy way to remember the university training site now. And this is the new site that they have put up. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by looking at the badges and certifications, and specifically the certifications. So this is going to show you pages for each one of the current active certifications. As you can see, there's a few of them here. I'm going to specifically focus on ACP 420, just because that's the one that I am currently actively studying for, because I will be taking that certification exam soon. So when you get onto this page, what you're going to see is a bit of information about the certification and what you're going to be looking for as far as the requirements to take this up front. So the one thing I'd really like to point out is this whole note about needing about 1 year's worth of experience. If you've written certification exams outside of Atlassian before, you'll know that a lot of them are pretty much you read a textbook, you write some documentation, or you read some documentation, and then you write the exam without ever having actually used the product itself. The Atlassian certifications are not designed to work that way. They are more of a rite of passage after you have been using the product for a while, just to sort of prove to yourself that you actually know as much as you think you know, or maybe to prove that you don't know as much as you think you know, after you've been using the product for a while. A lot of these certifications are also administrator based. So if you are just an end user, try and learn from your administrator a little bit more the technical aspects of what they're working on. If this is something that you're interested in getting into. If you're a project administrator, same thing. Try and learn as much as you can about the administration aspects of the role before you attempt to take the exam. So what you'll see here is a listing of what sort of things are going to be covered in the exam itself. And if you can read everything that they have listed here and say, yep, I know all of those things, then you should probably start studying for the exam. If you see anything on here or a bunch of things on here that you're like, I haven't really done a lot of that, it might be worth holding off for a bit and, learning more about that area. Read the documentation, start up a trial site. You can always start up a free cloud trial and try out the application yourself. If you're using server or data center and you're studying for one of those exams, I know for a fact that you can also spin up a test license, and then as long as you just have the hardware to set up a test instance, you can actually use that as well without any cost. So it's going to have a link here as to how you can schedule your exam. If you're not familiar with that, I can absolutely cover that in a later video. Just let me know in the comments if you'd like me to talk about scheduling exams. It's going to give you some details on the price of the exam, the duration that they're going to give you, what a passing score is. As this is a brand new one, I think they haven't really figured that out yet, and I think they're going to use the first few people taking it to come to sort of a determination on sort of a bell curve of what questions everyone seems to get right, which ones they seem to get wrong, which ones they think should be included and shouldn't. So it's going to be up to 75 questions, which is good to know that, that just gives you an idea of how many questions you're going to be asked, and if you've taken any exams in the past, approximately how long it takes you to finish an exam, how much time you're going to need. The next thing which is the first thing I look at personally, is the exam topics listing. And the reason that this is the first thing I look at is this is going to tell you everything that's going to be on the exam. And it's going to break it down with the weights of how much they're worth on the exam. Now, I'm not trying to tell you that you should ignore certain things that aren't worth as much, but you should definitely take that into account when you're looking at this holistically and deciding if this is something that you think you have a good understanding of, or if there are things that you are a little concerned about. So personally for me, when it comes to working with service project and issues, I've been doing that for quite some time because I use the service project I administer for receiving requests to make changes to our Jira instance. Managing access and permissions, I am very comfortable with this. This is something I've also covered on some of the other exams. Seeing that it's worth 15 to 20, that's a good sign for me. Moving on, project configuration. As I said, I am in there daily doing configuration changes. 35%, up to 35% of the exam, I'm comfortable with that. If that is something that you are not very comfortable with because you don't handle a lot of project configuration, seeing that it's worth 35% of the exam would indicate to me that a large chunk of the questions that are going to be asked are going to be on this topic. And if you're not comfortable with that, this is something you might want to consider spending a bit more time understanding before you consider scheduling the exam. You'll notice off to the side, and I'll get into this a bit more in a second, that there are these hyperlinks here, which go over the various topics. That's going to take you to the product documentation. It's a great way to figure out if you actually understand the aspects that are going to be covered or not. So moving on, if I look at some of the other ones, 5 to 10% on notifications, that's perfectly fine. Knowledge management, we do have it hooked up to our Confluence instance, and I was actually the one who set that up, so that I'm comfortable with. Reporting, I'm not as comfortable with personally. 10 to 15% tells me that I probably want to spend some time looking at reporting, probably more than, say, project configuration, which I do daily. Not that I'm not going to look at project configuration, but when I'm already comfortable with a topic, it'll be easier for me to answer the questions on the exam than it will be for something that I'm not as familiar with, where I might get a little confused with the way the questions are worded. Customer portal, I did set things up, not something that I'm in daily. The fact that it's 3 to 5%, I'm still comfortable because there's only probably going to be a few questions on the exam about that. So let's go back and let's talk specifically about project configuration, since it makes up the bulk of it. And you'll notice the hyperlinks here. If we click on one of these, you'll see that what that's going to do is take me right to the documentation. What is a project template? And it's going to talk about the various project templates, which is a great way for you to get in and start diving into what you need to study for the exam. So what I would recommend is use the exam topic listing as a way to guide yourself through the various things that you're going to need to go into the documentation and start doing some studying on. In addition to this, like I mentioned earlier, have a cloud site or a cloud site or a server data center instance set up so that not only are you just reading the documentation, but you're actually trying the things out at the same time. I don't know how other people learn. Me personally, I learn by doing things. So reading things doesn't stick as well, but if I read it and then I actually apply it to a test instance that I'm working in, it'll actually stick a lot more for me. So going back to the page now, because we will leave the exam topic listing for now, which I would recommend saving if you haven't saved it locally, just so that you have a copy of it. They're going to talk about things as far as preparing for the exam. So, they mention that you should download the exam topic list, which we just covered. And then they also list some of the training courses you should take. I would say if you have not actually worked in any of in the product that you're going to be taking the exam for instance, Jira Service Management, I would actually highly recommend, as much as it's a paid course, get the paid course first. That will be not everything that's going to be covered on the exam, but it's a foundation to get you started in being able to work in your cloud or server data center instance. So I'm just going to open up a tab here just to show this takes us right. We're still within the university site, but right to the course. And the course itself is going to tell you what items are covered in here. It also shows what credentials it's listed to, some additional resources you might be interested in, and what learning path it's on. What's great about this is it's going to actually show you what is covered in this. So if you look at the lesson listing and you're like, you know what, I've actually been using Jira Service Management for a while, and I already know all of these things, maybe the course isn't for you. It might be a little basic at that point, and maybe what you should do is just do some documentation study on your own. Going back, we'll also see that there are some skill builder courses, and skill builders are free courses that usually link to a badge or a pro badge that you can take in addition to certifications that will either extend your certification, or you can take them as a precursor just to show that you have some expertise in one area that will be covered on the exam. I highly recommend going through those courses even if you are already familiar with them, just because it's great additional study to help you. So I will personally be going to each one of these, and I'll be watching the courses that are there as a way of studying for things like JQL and SLAs within Jira Service Management. Moving on, they always give you some sample questions. I know there's not a lot of sample questions, and I know that a lot of people have said you need more sample questions. Personally, I think the sample questions do a good job of giving you the context for the type of questions that are going to be answered on the exam or asked on the exam. What you need to be aware of is that Atlassian's structure for asking the questions is always going to give you a single answer that is the absolute right answer. And if you're confused when reading it and you can say, oh, I think 3 or 4 of those are also the right answer, start asking yourself what's wrong with those answers. Because there's usually some key piece that is wrong with the answer. Either the information they have provided you doesn't explicitly tell you that something is correct, and therefore you're making an assumption based on other things that could be active within the system. Or, in another case, they're asking you for 2 or 3 possibilities, and you have to look at the ones that are specific to being a service project manager, and not, say, an Atlassian full Jira administrator, or even a site or org administrator, but the things that are specific to that project administrator. Those things are usually called out in the question, and those are details that you'll want to pick up on and be aware of when you're answering the questions. As a side note, when writing the exam, any question that I'm not 100% sure of, I will always flag to come back and look at later. I find that sometimes my nerves really get to me when I first start writing the exam, and it's not until I get into that 33rd or even the 40th question where I really start striking that groove of I'm a little bit more comfortable with answering the questions. And so I'll have, the first 10 to 14 of them flagged, and I'll just go back now that I'm calmer, more comfortable in the zone, and reread them. And I find that a number of the times I realized something that I hadn't read the first time through, and I've always changed some of my answers, and I have passed a lot of my exams that changing some of those answers might have actually made a difference. The sample questions are great. They give you an idea of what you're going to be looking at. I highly recommend, my personal opinion is, do the sample questions before you even start studying. Use that as a baseline to sort of figure out where your knowledge gaps are. If your knowledge gaps are in notifications, that's probably where you should start first. Project configuration, start there. All over the place, probably think about not scheduling the exam yet. So it's going to move on to sort of a bit of an overview of how to prepare for the exam, as well as where to get more resources, and then a bit more information about scheduling. Beyond this, now you need to figure out how you're going to study. For me personally, I will use either just a notepad listing of everything that I know I need to do. Some people put it into a Trello board. And I personally like to schedule my exam. As much as I have just said that you might not want to schedule it if you're not comfortable with things, I know that I'm comfortable with writing this exam, and I need to put a deadline on things so that I don't procrastinate on my studying. And what I'm going to end up doing is I will sort of figure out how much time I think I need based on those exam topic listings, how much weight is given to each category, and how many items are covered in each category. And I do a rough estimate of how long I think it's going to take me to properly study for each category. And then I work my way backwards from how long I think it's going to take me to study everything that I need to cover to be comfortable with it. And I'll book my exam that many weeks out. For me personally, I will be writing this exam on October 8th. And I'm giving myself 2 weeks to completely cover everything that's listed in this topic. I'm still working full-time during the day, so this is going to be in and around other commitments I have in the evening, as well as just some weekend study as well. I hope that this has been helpful to anyone as far as how I get prepared to write an exam, and I hope some of these ideas might help you in the future as far as writing your own exams. Good luck to anyone who is writing an exam, and I hope you do really well, and thanks for stopping by.